Hey everybody, it's let's see, it's the 14th of June, so Wednesday. I've been home now 2 weeks. The ankle is healing. It's not ready yet for hiking. Um, there's I know sometimes it feels pretty good, and I'll go out and walk around the yard with it, and then I'll come back and sit down for a while, and I get up and it's almost like it's just like it's all stiffened up. So still not ready for hiking time, but. Anyway, this is I promised you kind of an after-action report and lessons learned on my experience so far. Overall, I hiked 453 miles, of which 224 of those were with an injury. My goal, of course, was the 1,200 or so, 1,250 miles to be able to finish the trail, so I could get that done in 2 years. That's not going to happen now, so this will have to be probably a three-year quest for me. For those who don't know and are kind of new to the channel, I had a heart attack 5 years ago, so I'm on a beta blocker, and I've discovered that acts like a governor on a motor for my heart. It's kind of a governor, and it won't let it go more than about 130 to 135 beats a minute, which means a lot of times I just got to take things slower. And so, for me, a good pace is 2 miles an hour. But I'm not going to get that over rough terrain, so I have to slow down, and it just means I got to go. It's going to take me longer. One of my goals this year, and that's the reason I called this year's event a flip flop, was I wanted to be able to provide some information for people on starting at Harper's Ferry in the spring and what they could expect weather-wise. Because when I went to do some research, I couldn't find it. When you start in the south, most people know that you don't get rid of your winter gear until you get to Pearisburg for most of the hikers, because of Mount Rogers and the cold and unpredictability of the spring. You just don't send your winter gear home till Pearisburg, and then you got to get it back by the time you get to up to the Whites. You want to get your winter gear back. For somebody like Early Riser 71, I think he pretty much kept his winter gear because he was moving so fast that he pretty much followed spring all the way up. And but anyway, I wanted to be able to provide something for those who were headed north as a flip-flop in the spring. Didn't get to the point where I was ready to send any winter gear home. I did send home my Patagonia base top that I was using as a sleeping top. I only used it once or twice, and even then I really didn't need to. So I was carrying that as extra weight. You could get by really leaving in April. At least I left from April, remember, from Skyland, so I had 4 days of the Shenandoahs to do, and then that section then out of Front Royal into Harper's Ferry. So those are an extra 4 or 5 days because I took a zero. So let's call it 9 days to get to Harper's Ferry from the 1st of April. So with that, honestly, my 30-degree quilt would have worked fine. With one layer of sleeping layer, and I think I only put socks on one night, and even then that was kind of overkill. It was a night that it was supposed to be getting close to freezing, and I put them on because I just didn't like because I had my Sawyer down on my sleeping bag, down in the foot box, and just my feet touching the plastic. I just didn't like that, so I put some socks on, but really I didn't need that, so that was a little overkill. But so for winter gear, literally, I think just a sleeping bag and something dry to sleep in. I think it would be fine. All right, now the terrain. I totally underestimated the terrain, and I'll get into a little bit about the Guthook and AWOL terrain relief differences. But yes, I knew I was going to get into rocks in Pennsylvania, but after that, I just assumed that New Jersey, New York, probably Connecticut, Massachusetts. I mean, it would all be pretty benign. It wouldn't be bad until you got into Vermont and New Hampshire again. Man, I was wrong. The rocks start just after Duncannon, and they lasted the rest of my hike. And from what I hear from Early Riser, it was pretty much that the roots and the rocks continued all the way to the end of the trail. So psychologically, I would say, once the rocks start, that's the rest of the trip. My frustration was that in New York, that wasn't a trail anymore. They were blazes on trees over large piles of boulders that you had to climb over, and the great weekend hikes. But when you're trying to do a through hike and a long hike, getting distance, that was really hard on the body, hard on the psyche, and trying to hike injured, I couldn't do it. I probably could have, if there had been a trail there, I may have been able to survive that and work off the injury, but what it was pretty rough, and I totally underestimated that. Let's see, my pack weight. I switched packs, went from the Osprey to the OLA, and in my videos I mentioned that it's technically rated up to 40 pounds for the Catalyst, but it didn't like to be over about 32, and that's where my planned gross weight was right around 32 pounds with 5 days of food, 2 liters of water. Most of the time I had to carry 3 liters of water especially through Pennsylvania over those long ridgeline walks, especially around the Superfund site. The pack didn't like that. That pack really does well when it's 30 pounds and below, to be honest with you. Let's see, the backup battery pack that I used was an Anchor, like a 20,100 milliamp, and that gave me like 7 full charges on my cell phone. That was probably a little overkill because I would stop every 4 days. I really wouldn't need that. If you're going more time in between, or you're relying upon just sitting in a pizza place and borrowing their power charger, the 20,100 milliamp takes a full 8 hours to recharge to a full charge. So it's definitely one of those, you got to do it while you're doing an overnight stop. But it gave me plenty of battery power. I didn't have any worries about it. But it's 13 ounces. That's a pretty heavy power pack. I wouldn't go anything less than about 10,000 milliamps because it'd take really a long time to charge your phone. You only get maybe 3 charges out of it. Maybe something in between, maybe a 15,000 milliamp charger would probably be adequate, and maybe only weigh maybe 10 ounces, maybe 9 or 10 ounces, depending upon the model that you get. But if you want electricity for your devices, you're gonna, and I don't do a lot of, I did do some uploading with it a couple of times, but I didn't really have usually I need to have 3 bars of 4G to do an upload. Excuse me. And while I had a good coverage, I didn't necessarily have that great of signal to be able to do the uploads. But it would have been nice. I plan on keeping it. It's a good piece of gear. It is definitely a luxury item, though. Okay, let's talk about, and by the way, these are not in any kind of special order, but let's talk about Guthook and AWOL. I love both of those products. They each have their place and their benefits and their strengths, if you will. Weakness, I mean, the only weakness of either of them is, the Guthook requires you to have electricity and charging on your phone, and the AWOL guide, it's weight. It has weight. Okay, a little interruption there. Had somebody knock on the door here, and let's see. I think I was in the middle of talking about Guthook and AWOL, and a couple of just their small disadvantages, but there's a bunch of advantages. Let's see, the AWOL guide. The AWOL guide is a good strategic planning document. I didn't feel I could use Guthook to really well plan out my next resupply, resupply +1, resupply +2. Because a lot of times I'd like to sit down maybe when I was zeroing, or one of those evenings when I was in the tent and it was still a little early and it was light, and to be able to just lay out the pages and start kind of looking ahead at what's coming out. Plus, I really like to have the maps of the cities in there. And to have kind of everything kind of laid out that way. This year's Guthook, there were some errors in it with page numbers. David tended this year to take and group a lot of the map pages and the city pages together, a little further back, sometimes even like 8 pages back from where they actually show up in the profile view. And some of those references were in error, so you had to kind of like, wait a minute, where is this at? It's not on page 144. Oh, it's on page 148 instead, or 142. And you said there were some of those things you had to work through, but for the most part, the having all that information there on kind of one page for a town, and having the map corresponding to it, and the scale especially, to see the layout and look at what the scale was really, really helpful. So it's a very good strategic planning guide. Last year I had the pertinent map pages out with me, and I did that this time too, but I found myself not even looking at them during the day. I would, maybe in the morning, I would look and say, okay, there's 3 water sources today, and then I would look on Guthook and find out, okay, well, he's got 5 water sources. So and that was one of the things that I liked about Guthook, is it tended to be updated, and you could tap on a waypoint, and it would bring up comments about that, a little bit more detail than what was in the AWOL guide. And there was a place there where people may have put comments. For example, the one shelter that I had, and the name escapes me, but I had where they had the water that was stashed in the bear box. There was a comment that from somebody just 2 weeks earlier that said, hey, yeah, there was water in their bear box. So I was like, okay, there's a good chance there's probably still water being supplied in their bear box. It's only been 2 weeks. So where the AWOL mentioned that sometimes there's water in their bear box, but to be able to look at Guthooks and see something that was updated. And you could see a lot of stuff that happened like last fall where there was a drought, and there would be comments in there like, this water source is dried up, and you could see that in there. And so I think that would be very, very helpful, depending upon the time of the year that you're because during the fall the water does tend to dry up. Springtime there's more rains. So that was one of the huge benefits of the Guthook, is being able to have some of those look at some of those comments and get updates from it. And along those lines, knowing exactly where you were, as I mentioned in my videos, that the iPhone, the GPS works when you're in airplane mode, so you can save battery power by not roaming, but yet your GPS would still work. Now it would drain battery power. You know what? You could disable that. You could there's a little toggle to turn the GPS off, and you wake up your phone and you toggle back on, and most times it would pretty quickly, and I say quickly, within 20 to 30 seconds, it would geolocate itself and give you a good spot. And it really helped to, okay, did I pass that water source? Did I pass that trail intersection? Did I miss it, or did I find it? And there was a couple of times where it was like, okay, there's no more blazes. Where am I? Start walking backwards. While I'm walking backwards on the trail and I'm pulling up the Guthook, I'm like, oh yeah, look at this. I'm off the trail. So you could use that to actually make sure, okay, I'm back to the trail. This intersection is it. I'm right on the line. Now let's get back on the AT. So I thought it was very helpful. I can't believe I hiked all last year without using it, and I'm definitely going to use it in the future. Definitely worth the money to go ahead and do that. Okay, fuel. Now canister stoves. Last year I really liked the smaller ones. Okay, this is a small one. This is the medium one, and of course I've got a bigger one that's like twice this size. Okay. I like this smaller one. It'd go about 10 meals. That's a resupply plus one. Doesn't weigh very much, and I kind of like that because it's you don't want to carry weight. But I noticed that but it also has the bigger ones have an advantage, is that you need to, they last a long time. Well, how long do they really last? So I started off with a full one at Skyland, and my friend Jesse gave me this small one at Front Royal. And by the time I got off the trail, I had used the large one and 3 days of this one. So this one here lasted a long time, especially when your freezer bag cooking. Ramen noodles you don't have to boil the water, you just have to get it hot. It lasted a long time. I never did a resupply of fuel in the 50 some days that I was hiking. Now, I was getting concerned with the smaller one because as I was starting to look ahead at being able to get fuel and resupply, it looked like Kent, the outfitter at Kent, Connecticut, it was going to be my first opportunity to resupply, and I was looking at running out of fuel. Matter of fact, I was planning on my last resupply before Kent, probably having to do cold cooking or not cooking at all, just having the same food that I ate for lunch as for dinner. So I think my lesson learned is the larger fuel bottle gives you more opportunities for fuel resupply when you get north. Okay, in the south, there's so many opportunities. Every hostel's got fuel. It looked like I was starting to notice that the resupply with fuel was starting to stretch between resupplies. So going back north again, I would probably stick to the larger one. All right. Wow. Clothing. Pants. I like to wear pants. The belt causes me problems. Last year I had a thicker web belt that just acted like a cheese grater on my waist. Went to a thinner, narrower belt this year. Still had the same problems with it. Now I did transition finally to a kind of a beltless with a elastic waist. Pair of Patagonia trail running shorts. I wore those for 3 days. Had terrible chafing that last day with them because it has instead of just a liner in it, it had like almost like a spandex short that was built into it. Didn't really do a good job with me for the chafing or the brand will come to me in a minute. Of shorts of underwear that I wear do a really good job of preventing chafing. So for me, I think I need to maybe transition to a pair of just athletic shorts with elastic waistband and take out any liner in them and just wear the shorts underneath it. So permethrin. I really should have sprayed all my clothes before I left. I was going to wait and do it on the trail like I did last year, but I ended up not getting the permethrin like I should have when I stopped there at Port Clinton and sprayed everything, treated everything. I didn't realize that the ticks were going to start so soon, so that was a lesson learned. Excuse me, I've got the cough here. Okay, so the lesson learned with permethrin, get the stuff treated before you leave. You're probably going to have to treat it at least once on the trail, but that didn't work well for me. So, okay, cell phone carrier, Verizon still worked great for me. And I think if you're watching Early Riser, he was even having cell reception way up in some of the remote areas of Maine with his Verizon. So that's one of those. Hey, it's a good lesson. Pass it on to everybody. If you want to do video updates, and sometimes it's just as simple as being able to have data to be able to pull up the Weather Channel and look at the weather radar. It'll position locate. It'll give you your little blue dot of where you are at in the mountains there, and you can be able to see where the cells are, which direction they're moving, when am I going to get wet? Because one of the questions that I had was from somebody was, well, how do you set up your tent in the rain? I said, avoid it at all costs. Well, how do you avoid it? Well, you time it. Sometimes you can time it. When's it going to get here? Is it a small cell? Is it a big cell? Look, okay, the rain's coming, but it's going to pass within 10 or 20 minutes. We'll just sit underneath the shelter until it's done. Then we'll go set up the tent. So having just some data for Weather Channel is great. To be able to look some things up, to get some directions. Yeah, worth its weight in gold. Oh, to be able to check Facebook. The Conservancy set up a 2017 flip-flopper homepage that you could join. And there's a lot of data getting passed back and forth between people on great places to stay, places to avoid. You know, I put on there that, hey, Cabela's isn't doing any a trail pickup anymore there at Port Clinton. You're gonna and gave a couple of names and phone numbers of local guys who would now come that are not in the AWOL guide. So you know, I provided a great resource for people coming behind me. So things like that help make the experience much more pleasant. Now, my food and my pack weight, especially the food weight, that continued to plague me most of this this particular hike. The last segment when I got off, my pack, when we showed up at the car with Sky King, he had a pack scale in the car, and he weighed my pack. It was still 35 pounds, and granted, I still had 3 days of food in it, but that's still way too heavy. You know, in the process of trying to throw more protein in, for me, that drove more weight, and I noticed that I was not eating a lot of the snacks. A lot of those snacks are starting to roll over. So now, granted, I wasn't losing weight as fast as I did last year, and I didn't lose as much muscle as I did at this point last year in my hike. But still, I just wasn't settled in the meals and how that was working. Anyway, so that was that one still frustrated me, and I still don't have necessarily a good solution for that. All right, I'm going to do another little quick video that follows this one, that is a call for questions, so I can then do a follow-up video and I'll answer people's questions. There's questions that people have had in the comments, and those are spread throughout all the videos, and so that might be kind of a hard place to go for people to get some of those answers. And honestly, some of them were just provided as real quick, short answers, and I may be able to have some time to do some more in-depth questions. I know I said I would do this after my hike last year, and frankly, I just never got around to it. And after 3 or 4 months, you kind of feel like you've lost your edge, and I didn't feel like I was in a position to give good answers anymore. So whether it's about trail stuff, family stuff, hiking stuff, spiritual stuff, doesn't matter. And I'll say that in the video that I put out here in a minute. So, all right. So this has been probably a little bit longer than it should have been, but this is some of my lessons learned for this year. So in a recap, I didn't fail. My goals, I fell short of my goals, but I'll just do it now. I'll do some more hiking in the fall, and I'll come back next year and finish it up then. I'm still working on my pack weight and my food weight. I've got to get that down. I've been telling everybody that my Big Agnes tent is sub 2 pounds. Well, guess what? I got back and I actually put it on a scale, and yeah, the tent and the fly and the pack that you and the sack you put it in is just under 2 pounds. But when you add the poles and the 8 stakes, I'm at 2 pounds 6.5 ounces. So that's what, 38 and a half ounces. And when you're looking at, you know, you can look at some other options with Z-Pack tents, and they're half that. So there is some possible weight gains to work there. And you know, doing the permethrin before I hike was something I should have done, and that was a lesson learned big time for me. So, all right, quick little summary, and that's done. That's it. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and throw them in the comments. But I will do a call for question video here, and that would be a great place to summarize those questions that people have that I can then maybe come back and answer. All right, everybody, thanks for your support, and we'll be talking with you later. Bye.